Good evening, everybody. Dr. Vasquez here, coming to you live from my new office, which obviously doesn't have any decoration yet, but it will eventually. So I just wanted to try to put together this video about some ideas that I've had recently, of course, but ideas that have recently kind of come together for me. So I've been trying to figure this thing out. I saw a video the other day that demonstrated unusual behavior from someone, and I'll show you the video in just a minute. I'll show you the video, and I'll show you some other like social media commentary on that video. But in this video, which is of a famous person, this famous person is kind of reaching a new level of insanity, and so, or maybe more correct would be to say a new level of unusual behavior. So I was trying to figure that out, and I looked at the video, and I first of all appreciated it as unusual behavior from an adult, especially an adult who works in the field of money and economics and things like that. So I had to kind of sit with it for a little while, and then pretty quickly I realized that what I was seeing is something that we call confabulation. I will look up. Actually, I haven't looked it up, but I will look it up right now. Confabulation is a term that many of us in the medical world are familiar with, but also those of us in the nutrition world. And actually, that's probably where I'm most familiar with that term, is within the context of clinical nutrition. So I'm looking at two different definitions right now of confabulation, actually three. So I'll just read you these three definitions, and I'll provide a source when I put this on the website. So the first one says, confabulation is the creation of false memories without conscious intent to deceive. So as Harry Frankfurt famously said in his book on bullshit, Henry Frankfurt is or was a professor emeritus of philosophy at Princeton, I believe. And he wrote this book many years ago. It's a pretty famous book. It's called On Bullshit. And in the discussion of bullshit, he distinguishes between bullshit and lying. And he says the distinction between bullshit and lying is that lying, by its very nature, actually represents a respect for the truth, because it's an attempt to cover up the truth. And you can say, well, that's a horrible way to respect the truth. But at least on some level, a person who's lying acknowledges that a certain truth exists. They might want to ignore it, or they might want to deny it or cover it up, but on some level they're aware of reality. Whereas he says the bullshitter doesn't care about reality. They're just going to say whatever comes to their mind, and it doesn't matter if it's true or false. He says that in an interview on his book. He says the bullshitter might actually tell the truth, but it doesn't matter to them. They don't have respect for the truth. So a bullshitter is just going to say whatever they want. And bullshitting is somewhat similar to confabulation, except that confabulation is reasonably a medical diagnosis or is part of a medical diagnosis. So, in the spectrum, or it may not even be a spectrum, it may be kind of a triad, so to speak. But you've got liars who know what the truth is and try to cover it up or deceive it or distract away from it. That's lying. Then you've got bullshitters who will just say whatever works for them. It could be the truth, it could be false, it doesn't matter. They're just gonna say whatever they want you to think and feel and see and understand, so that you'll think that they're the greatest or whatever. That's bullshit. But confabulation is different. And again, I'll read you these definitions. Confabulation is the creation of false memories without conscious intent to deceive. It's not a deliberate lie, but rather an unintentional filling of memory gaps with fabricated or distorted information. Another definition says, confabulation is a memory error consisting in the production of fabricated, distorted, or misinterpreted memories about oneself or the world. Fabricated, distorted, or misinterpreted. And then here's another. I guess I'll go with two more, since these are somewhat official medical definitions. Confabulation is a neuropsychiatric disorder wherein a patient generates a false memory without the intention of deceit. So it's kind of like, I guess this would be the distinction. A bullshitter is going to say whatever comes to their head because they want to influence your thoughts. So they could tell the truth, they could tell a lie. Truth and reality doesn't matter to a bullshitter. They're just going to say whatever they want. Again, that's coming from Henry Frankfurt, PhD, philosophy. I don't know if I said psychology earlier, but it's philosophy. So let's see. Confabulation is deceit without intent, whereas bullshit is deceit with intent. But it could also be the truth with intent. Whereas a liar, by definition, of course, will have to say a few things that are true, but mostly they're trying to protect or distract away from whatever a certain truth is. Here's another here's a Cambridge Dictionary definition. Let's see what it says here. I have to open up the page. Confabulation. No, they just give examples, sorry. So here it says, the medical definition is a problem that makes someone produce false memories about events. It doesn't have to be memory like in the past. It could be like right now. They could make it up in the present. So I don't know why they describe it as false memory about events or the false memories themselves. And here they say, confabulation differs from lying in that the person is not consciously attempting to deceive. But it is I think more emphasis in these definitions should be given to the fact that confabulation is representative of a brain disorder. Now, it could be its own brain disorder, I guess, or its own symptom, but it usually has an underlying primary problem. And confabulation is kind of a secondary manifestation. Confabulations are artificial constructions of our own design. That's not a good definition. It says built around particles of retained experience. And I don't know, I guess maybe that's okay. But basically it just means that someone's just kind of reaching and pulled stuff out of the air and putting it together, and it doesn't make any sense. So we've all seen a certain individual who's very popular in all types of global news and national news and whatever else. We've all seen this particular person talk in a way that makes no sense. But now that nonsense has gone to another level recently. And so in the past, with this particular person's confabulation or confabulations, we could say that his confabulations were of a narcissistic origin, because apparently narcissists are famous for confabulating, because that's how they maintain this shell or facade or illusion of their grandiosity and self-importance. So I will also include the diagnostic kind of characteristics, not necessarily criteria, but characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder. These characteristics, of which I'm looking at 9 of them, and I'll put these on the website with the reference source here. Symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder include sense of self-importance, preoccupation with power, beauty, or success, sense of entitlement, can only be around people who are important or special, at least that's what they think, interpersonally exploitative for their own gain, arrogant, lacking empathy, must be admired, and envious of others or believe that others are envious of him or her. So this particular person, who I'm, again, going to demonstrate in just a minute with some examples from his own words, this particular individual, within the relatively recent past, was accused of sexual assault, and in his mind, his way of defending himself from the charge of sexual assault, even though he admitted that it happened, he said, well, it was such a great experience for her that she fainted from pleasure or something like that. She fainted from great emotion. That's what he said. And that's classic narcissism for two reasons. One is he's showing lack of empathy, and he's also showing that he has the right to exploit another person. In this case, it was a woman. He has the right to exploit her because it's going to be for her own good. She's going to get so much pleasure out of being sexually assaulted that she will faint from the pleasure of the experience, according to him. And so that, in that one statement, he demonstrated arrogance, lack of empathy, interpersonally exploitative for their own gain, he's entitled to do whatever he wants, and this sense of self-importance. I mean, in one sentence, he got like 5 out of 9 points here. So this particular, again, individual has a long history of just saying things that are completely absurd, but to his advantage. So the previous context of his confabulations or fabricated stories, was mostly centered around narcissism and still is centered around his own narcissism. But recently, in his comments on the economy, and what was it? His role in what he says is reducing drug prices for Americans. Recently, what I perceived in his commentary was that it was just getting more bizarre and more absurd. So it's still self-serving. So it certainly fits with narcissistic confabulation. But again, to my perception, what I believed I was seeing was yet another level of, even beyond narcissistic confabulation. He was just kind of like out of his head, saying things that didn't make sense, that even a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old should know better, right? So I got the impression that his confabulation or his confabulations were progressing.
Now, President Trump made big promises about lowering drug prices once he got into office, but all the haters said he was never actually going to get it done. Well, guess what, haters? His promises just got even bigger.
We're going to get the drug prices down, not 30 or 40%, which would be great, not 50 or 60, no. We're going to get them down 1,000%, 600%, 500%, 1,500%, numbers that are not even thought to be achievable.
Yeah, I also thought it would not be achievable to lower drug prices 1,000%, because that's not how percentages work. Just so you understand, lowering drug prices 100% means it's free. Lowering it past that means they're going to give you money.
So, reasonably, if a person has narcissistic personality disorder, we might assume that their confabulations could be, obviously, by definition, it's somewhat exaggerated and self-serving, but you might expect them to be stable over time. But again, what I perceived was that, wow, this confabulation was kind of going on to a new level, because he was saying things that weren't simply wrong about him and what a great guy he was and how he understands military better than anyone else and how he understands windmills. Recently, he said I think he said he understands wind and windmills better than anyone else. So that's a narcissistic confabulation. But to, again, go to a more profound or deeper or more advanced level of confabulation, I thought, wow, his confabulations are actually progressing into the realm of complete nonsense. He's not just making up some literally bullshit story about himself to try to convince people about how great he is, but he's off the planet. He's not in contact with reality anymore. And again, I had to sit with it for at least a few minutes and try to figure out, what am I seeing here? And maybe in another conversation, I'll get into a diagnostic technique called multi-axis I think it's either multi-axis assessment or multi-axis diagnosis. I'll have to look it up. I haven't looked at that in many years. I learned about this about 25 years ago when I was studying addictions, disorders, and abnormal psychology, specifically at Bastyr University under Keith Grinix, who was one of the best professors I ever had. And somewhere in the several courses that he taught us about various psychological and psychiatric problems and diagnoses, but including, of course, narcissistic personality disorder. But it was around that time that I learned about those diagnoses, confabulation, because I was, of course, studying nutrition. I'll get to that in just a minute. And the multi-axis, it's either multi-axis assessment or multi-axis diagnosis, but it's a brilliant technique. And I'll make another video about that because this one's going to be rambling enough, believe me, after intense relocation for the past 3 days. So again, narcissistic confabulation, according to what I've looked at recently, because I never really heard about this before, but apparently that's a thing. It really exists. And then, of course, we have confabulation in the nutrition world, because confabulation is a symptom of Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which is typically attributed to thiamine deficiency in alcoholics. It can also be generated by magnesium deficiency. And of course, that makes sense if you think about the tight relationship between magnesium and thiamine and mitochondria and the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex and all that. Maybe I'll talk about that more. That would be like another conversation, which I'm interested in having, but I don't think we'll have that conversation right now. But to state it more plainly, when people are deficient in thiamine, typically in alcoholics, but it can also happen in people who have malabsorption from intestinal disorders or other types of malnutrition, they develop a syndrome called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, and Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome is characterized by confabulation. And it does warrant a different conversation, because thiamine deficiency can cause Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, but it can also cause dry beriberi and wet beriberi. And dry beriberi is somewhat similar to Wernicke-Korsakoff. So I'll talk about that in an upcoming video and differentiate those things for your clarity and for mine. I'm interested in clarifying those things. So again, narcissistic confabulation fits the mold here, but again, we wouldn't expect it to be progressive. So when I saw this guy making up numbers in a way that even a child wouldn't do this, I had to start thinking, what's going on with his brain where his confabulation is getting worse? So I looked up some information about his dietary habits. Remember what I said, confabulation is classically seen in thiamine deficiency, specifically in alcoholics or other people with malnutrition. But Trump is obviously not an alcoholic, because apparently he doesn't drink and doesn't like to drink, and he, for the most part, or completely avoids it. But the other situation that can precipitate Wernicke-Korsakoff confabulation, or exacerbate, I'm reasonably stating, confabulate a previously existing narcissistic confabulation, what could cause that is, again, thiamine deficiency, but from what? From an excess of sugars, a poor diet, and mostly a fast food, junk food diet. And that is exactly the diet that Trump eats. So I'll show you some video clips. Again, I just looked it up recently. But Trump is famous for eating junk food. McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken. I think somewhere in one of his videos, he said in one of his whatever excerpts or clips or conversations, he said he doesn't like vegetables. I think that was said in one of the videos I saw yesterday. So again, in the attempt to understand his increasingly bizarre, in my attempt to try to understand his increasingly bizarre behavior, and specifically confabulation, which was previously narcissistic confabulation and now appears to be Wernicke-Korsakoff confabulation, I was trying to figure out how this could happen. And I think what we're seeing in Trump is the progression of his confabulation, which was purely narcissistic previously and is now Wernicke-Korsakoff, as it's apparently getting worse and worse. So again, I'll show you the video clips, and I'll show you the definitions of the terms that I used, which support this conversation. And eventually, I'll have to make another video when I'm not exhausted from relocating for the past 3 days. I'll make another video that distinguishes dry beriberi and wet beriberi, of course, from Wernicke-Korsakoff, and I'll talk about how it happens in the pathologic destruction, specifically of the mammary bodies within the brain. And I'll try to put that together in a way that's a little bit more prepared than this spontaneous video. But again, I wanted to kind of, for those of you who maybe were a little confused about this, like I was, I saw this video of Trump babbling about he says he's going to lower drug prices by 1,500%. Well, that's impossible. So again, he's famous for his narcissistic confabulations, but he appears to be progressing into Wernicke-Korsakoff, classically caused by thiamine malnutrition, which can be caused by either gastrointestinal disorder, alcoholism, which doesn't apply to him, or a junk food diet, which does apply to him. So, in my opinion, that explains his recent bizarre behavior. Hope you're all doing well. I'll put this video together with some clips and things like that to support what I'm saying and to show you what I've seen, so it'll make sense to you. But hope you're all doing well, and I'll get another video to you as soon as I can. Take care. Bye-bye.
Now, President Trump made big promises about lowering drug prices once he got into office, but all the haters said he was never actually going to get it done. Well, guess what, haters? His promises just got even bigger.
We're going to get the drug prices down, not 30 or 40%, which would be great, not 50 or 60. No, we're going to get them down 1,000%, 600%, 500%, 1,500%. Numbers that are not even thought to be achievable.
Yeah, I also thought it would not be achievable to lower drug prices 1,000%, because that's not how percentages work. Just so you understand, lowering drug prices 100% means it's free. Lowering it past that means they're going to give you money.